Hello and welcome, my name's Ryan, I'm also known as RM2K Dev. In this video, we're going to be talking about procedural generation. We're going to be doing procedural generation in a slightly different way though. Normally when we think about procedural generation, I think we're talking about creating maps and worlds and environments in which a player can walk around and move through. In this video, what I wanted to focus on was how you can think about procedurally generating other content within your game. So one day we might get into actually creating some procedural terrain and things like that. But for this video, I want to show you how to procedurally create an item like a sword. And in this example, we're going to be using some graphics created by a good friend of mine, Thomas Nookington. I will leave his social links to his Instagram and Twitter in the description of this video if you want to go and have a look at some of the artwork that he's made before, or contact him in regards to doing a project together. So this is the artwork that we'll be using. Right now I've just got all of the sprites and all of the effects working at the same time. So let me show you a little bit about what I've done. Now the project files obviously are going to be uploaded to Patreon, including the sprites for you to do some testing with as well. And if we go and just have a look at this, I've just created a room basically. I've placed an object in there called OBJ Black Sword, which should have been Blank Sword, but it's just it's basically just the sword sprite with no effects on it at all. And then what I've done is I've gone and layered up on top of that other objects: object rust, object sharp, object magic small, and object magic large. And I've just layered them up on top of each other like this so that we have a sort of animated object with all of the possible effects on it. The other thing I've done is I've got this button here which is just new, and when you click on that button it just does a little bit of image handling, and then it fires the user event 0 in the blank sword. So I'll just run the game so you can see what's happening here. Nothing will happen, but when I click on this, you'll see it goes yellow, just to indicate that it's been clicked on. It's actually firing an event user 0 in the base sword object, which is where we're going to do our procedural item generation. So let's get started quickly. I'm just going to open the blank sword object here. I'm going to add a create event. We're going to need to create some variables to store all of the properties of this sword. So the first property we need is going to be the item name. So I'm just going to say item name equals blank. Then I'm going to have one called blade type. This is going to be part of the name. We're just going to leave that as blank for now as well. I'm going to have a magic power, and I'm going to set that to 0. We're going to have a sharpness variable. I'm going to set that to 0 as well. And an age, I'm going to set that to 0 as well. Okay, so we have these variables set up now, which is item name, blade type, magic power, sharpness, and age. These are going to directly link to the effects that we use on the sword. For instance, if the sword has a low magic power variable, then we're going to put in the name something like of light intelligence, maybe in the item name, and we'll also use the light magic effect, which just has some like sparkly particles, you know. Whereas if it has a high magic power, we're going to use the large magic power effect. And the reason why I've done these as individual objects is just to deal with the animation. Since each type of effect has a different animation on it and a different length of frames, I'm just using objects because it will automatically deal with the animation for us. So now that we have these variables set up, I'm going to go ahead and create the event user 0. So just create an event user 0, and this is where we're actually going to do our procedural generation. So I'm going to get rid of this code up here. I'm just going to say do proc gen. So let's start by adding some blade types. So let's just say blade type equals choose. The choose function is just going to pick one of these at random. So one of these is going to be sword. There we go. I'm going to put another one. Let's put blade. Let's put another one. And basically, we're just creating something to generate the name. Put a saber, different kinds of blades, I guess you could call these. I'm going to put knife. I'll put another one called dagger. There we go. There we go. So now what we have is we have a system that's going to choose the name of the object for us every time we click this button. Then what we're going to do is we're just going to say item name equals blade type for now. And that's going to be enough just to randomly generate us a name. Let's get that to display on the screen. I'm just going to use the draw GUI function, draw GUI. Let's just say draw item name. And we'll just use the draw text function. I'm going to draw it 0, 0. Sorry, I'll draw it 10, 10. No, sorry, I'll draw it 1, 1. and I'm going to draw the string item name. Now, if we run the game and have a look what happens when we click the new button, you should see that it changes to something random every time we click this. So one of those different names. There we go. So back in our event user 0, let's go ahead and choose some random properties now. So we'll say magic power equals irandom. Oops. irandom, and we're just going to put 10. What this is going to do is going to choose an integer value, which is a whole number, basically meaning 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on, between, I think it's 0 and 9, or 1 and 10. But basically, we're going to have 10 points of information to store the magic power that will be whole numbers, not floating points. If we used the random function, we'd get a number like 1.99, 1.22, etc. So we've got magic power. I'll do sharpness, and I'll just say irandom, and we'll do 10 as well for that. And then we'll have age, and we'll do irandom, and we'll have 10 for that as well. Now, with regards to age and sharpness, we have an overlay for rustiness, and if we just have a look at some of these effects, I can show you those. So the overlay for rustiness just kind of makes the blade a bit dull looking, and then the sharpness one is an animated sort of light glistening on the blade effect. So the sharper it is, the more chance you're going to have of having this glistening light on the blade, yet the older it is, the potential it has for being rusty. So let's come back in here and have a look at what we're doing with this. So we've generated some random values for these. Now we can go ahead and start to amend that name based on these variables. So if we say something like if magic power is greater than 0 and magic power is less than 4, we're going to append something that just tells us that the item is lightly magical, or it has a little bit of magic to it. So we'll say item name plus equals, and we'll just do the choose function again. I'm going to choose something like light. No, not light. I need some. Yeah, we can use light. We'll just use the word light. Actually, we'll do light magic, something like that. So it'll be like sword light magic. So we need to actually append this with of. So item name plus equals. And we're going to put the word of. So put space of space. There we go. So this is going to append. So you get something like sword of light magic, sword of small intelligence, or something like that. Sword of sword. What other kind of light magics could we use? Sword of the sky. There we go. We'll just have we'll have a couple of properties like that to define what a light magic sword would look like. And then let's also do this again, but this time we'll just say if the magic power is greater than or equal to 4. So we'll say greater than or equal to 4. Whoops. Greater than or equal to 4. We'll say of light magic. So this time we'll say of magic because it's a larger item. Of intellect. I may not have enough intellect in spelling that correctly. Sword of sky power. I don't know. Just some magical names. You can choose these to be whatever you'd like them to be. So let's run that and have a look what sort of names we get now when we hit that generate button. So you see we've got sword of sky power, sword of intellect, dagger of magic, dagger of intellect. And obviously the more of these variables you put in there, the more kind of variety you're going to get in those names. So now that we have the magic power item, we can include something for sharpness and age. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually do it before the magic. So I'm going to come down here and just add another one. So I'll say if sharpness is greater than, let's just say if it's greater than 4. Oh, sorry, I was just thinking of a number then. If it's greater than 4, item name is going to be equal to, and then we'll choose something. All right. And the reason I'm doing this is because we're going to append item name. We're going to append blade type back onto this. Okay. So we'll say choose, and what we'll say is, we're going to say sharp. We'll give some sharpness kind of names. Precise. P-R-E-C-I. I can't remember how you spell precise. Whatever. S-E. There we go. Precise. Precision. Pointed. Just some names that kind of tell us that this sword is a bit sharp. Sharp, precise, precision, pointed. What other sharp words do we have? Sharpened, we'll just give it that kind of thing. I'm trying to think of one more, begins with a different letter so that we have some more variety. let's say, I can't think of another word for sharpness. This is called, say, direct. There we go, direct. So we'll get something like direct blade of light intelligence, something like that. Got to do the voice acting. So we've added on the sharpness sort of prefix, I think this is. Then we'll say item name plus equals blade type this time. And we'll also put a space between them. So there we go, we'll have a space. So now it's going to be sharp, dagger, and then potentially of light magic or of magic. So let's run that and have a look at how this is looking now. So when we generate some of these, sword of sky power, precise sword of intellect. So now we have these kind of prefixes: sharp dagger of sky power, sword of sky power, blade of sky power, saber of light magic, pointed blade of magic. So we're getting these prefixes now, which are kind of defining what the item actually looks like and does. So now we have age, and again, I'm going to do this above sharpness. We'll say in here, if age is greater than, let's say if age is greater than 6, if it's a very old sword, we're going to tell us that it's old. And we're going to do the same thing that we did. We're going to need to adjust this sharpness one as well, by the way. We're just going to say something in here, though, that says item name equals, let's say, old. Actually, let's do choose again. We'll do a couple of these. Choose. We'll do aged, aging, old, and ancient, antique. There we go. So now we have some of these variables for old. So we have basically got old. So now what we'll have, sorry, is aged something. Actually, you know what we should do? I'm sorry. Let me refactor a little bit of this. I just thought of a better way of doing this. Let's just create a age string equals that item. Age string sharp string equals that, and then we'll append them all at the end. That probably makes more sense. No, actually, no. I'm not going to do that. Let's just do it this way. Okay. So we have aged, aging, old, ancient, antique. Then we'll say item. So now if it has that, it's going to be that. Then we need to say plus equals choose. And then what we'll do is we'll change these to start with a space. That way it makes more sense. So now they're going to be... Oh, actually, hang on a minute. We're not going to start with a space. Sorry, guys. I'm just thinking this out as we go. We'll say if string length, and then we'll say item name. That's always going to happen. Item name is greater than 0, then we'll append a space. Item name plus equals space. There we go. And then we'll get rid of the item name equals blade type, and we'll just leave it as blank because it's going to generate itself as we move through this code. Okay, so sorry about that. I was just thinking something out as I was making the video. So basically what happens now is we come through this procedural generation for the name, and we say if it's aged greater than 6, we're going to call these years. If it's 6 years older, we're going to say that the item name now gets a prefix that defines its age. So it's going to be age, aging, old, ancient, antique. Then we come down to sharpness. Now, in sharpness, if we have a sharpness value greater than 4, we need to say if the item name already exists, so if there's already something in here, for instance, the word aged, aging, old, ancient, we need to add a space. But if there wasn't anything in here, then the sharpness variable is the first value. So we don't want to have a space prefixing everything. So we don't add the space if there is nothing in the string already. Now the string by default should be empty because we empty it at the beginning of this function using this line up here, number 5. Then what we do is we append the sharpness value and then the magical power value. So if there is a magic power value, it's of light magic or of magic, intellect, and sky power. So let's run that and have a look what we get. We should get some nice random. We have of sky power, aged, sharpened of magic, direct of intellect, aging of magic. I've lost the blade type somewhere. We got to put the blade type in here. We need to put blade type at here. So it should be, if we just come down here and we say item name plus equals blade type. I think that will fix it. Item name plus equals blade type. We add the space if we need it. Then we add a space after these. just in case we've added one of those. Then what we do is we add the blade type, and then we come through here and we add the magic power. Okay, that should, in theory, fix it. Sword of Sky Power, Aged, Sharpened Sword of Magic, Direct Dagger of Intellect, Aging Sword of Magic. Okay, so aging, we have an issue with aging for some reason. It must have come through here and missed it. All right, anyway, that's fine for now. You guys get the idea. Sword of Sky Power, Aged, Sharpened Sword of Magic, Direct Dagger of Intelligence, Aging Sword of Magic. Okay, so if we need to put this outside of this here, let's add a space if that exists. There we go. Sorry for the jumping around, guys. I'm kind of thinking about this code as we go. I did have a plan for this video, but I kind of changed in the middle a little bit, and we ended up where we are now. So anyway, it's making sense now. We have Precision Blade of Small Intelligence, Precise Blade of Magic, Saber of Sky Power, Pointed Blade of Small Intelligence, Antique Blade of Magic, Sharpened Sword of Small Intellect, Aged Sword of Small Intellect, Precise Sword of Light Magic, Old Sharpened Blade of Sky Power. That is the best blade of Sky Power, in my opinion. So we have this system now that generates all of these different kinds of properties. What we can do with that is we can simply enable and disable these animations based on what the sword has. So now we know that if the item is aged, then we need to turn on the rust effect. So we can say obj_rust.visible equals true. Now, before we do any of this, the other thing we need to do is turn them all off. So I'm going to disable them all, and I'm just going to simply do that. I'm going to say object rust.visible is false. We're going to say obj sharp.visible is false. Obj magic small.visible is false, and then obj_magic large.visible is false. We need to turn them all to false, right? Basically, because I've already added these into the room, we're going to turn them off. So you won't see them when we click that button, unless we turn them on again. And the only time they're going to be turned on is when they have the right property. So for instance, the Aged Sword here has the rust effect on it. The Direct Dagger of Intellect, however, doesn't have the rusty effect on it because it's not old enough. So if we go back in here, now you can see where we're going with this tutorial. If it is aged, we've gone ahead and added the rust effect. If it is sharp, we're just going to say obj sharp.visible equals true. So now we have the sharpness. Now we have light magic, obj_magic underscore light or small dot visible equals true. And then we'll do the same thing for large. So now we should have all these different variables that define what the sword actually looks like. Now, by default, everything is enabled, but as soon as we click this, you'll see that we have the Sword of Sky Power, which has its nice little magical aura. We have the aged sharpened sword of magic. So this is a highly magical sword because it has the large magic effect. It is sharp, but it's old, and therefore it's rusty. Now, in this one here, we have the Direct Dagger of Intellect. This is a highly magical item, again, because it has this large magical aura, and it's sharpened. If we click this, we'll have Sword of Magic. Let's find something that has a small. Here we go. So now we have the Precision Blade of Small Intellect. So this item has a light magical aura to it. It's a lot smaller than the big one. The reason for that is because it just doesn't have enough magical power. It's only small intellect, but it is sharp, as you can see. And then as we go Precise Blade of Magic, we can keep rolling these Saber of Sky Power, Pointed Blade of Small Intellect, Antique Blade of Magic. So here we go. Here's a really old item. It's very rusty, and it has this glowing aura to it. So it is a magical item, but it's old. It may not have very high sharpness value. In fact, it doesn't have a very high sharpness value because if we look at our code, if the sharpness was greater than 4, then the sharpness effect would have been turned on. So this tells us that this item is in fact not actually sharp. And you can see we can keep rolling these stats over and over again, and we'll just generate as many items as we possibly can. Now, the other thing that we can do, which I'm not going to do in this tutorial, just because I wanted to show you how to sort of create an item at runtime, sort of on the fly, and how to give it a name that actually makes sense, as well as, you know, adjusting the effect of the item as well. The thing that you could do is when you tell when you tell the system that these magics are visible, or that the sharpness is visible, or that the rust is visible, in those individual effect overlays, you could actually randomize their color using the image blend function. So I'll do one example of that with magic right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come down here to magic power. Then I'll just say with obj underscore magic underscore large. I'm just going to fire the event user 0. Now in the magic large effect, I'm going to add an event user 0, other events 0. And then what we're going to do, actually we'll also add a create event. In the create event, I'll say my underscore blend. Actually, no, I won't even bother doing that. I'll just go in here and I'll just say image underscore blend equals, I think it's make color RGB. Then what we do is we just say irandom 255. So we're just going to pick a random color. Irandom 255, 255, 255. So now what we've got is we have a random blend factor on this sprite. Now I'm not sure if the colors are all going to work properly, but we'll have a look. There we go. So it does work. So sky power. Now we have precise dagger of sky power, and every time we get a different one of these, it's going to give us a different colored effect because we used the blending. You can go in here and you can do all sorts of stuff. You could use image blend modes before you draw. So for instance, you could add in the draw event before we draw this item, draw set blend mode, I think it is. Okay, so you could even use a blend mode, for instance. We'll use the function GPU set blend mode for this, blend mode. We may even need to blend enable, but we'll try that after. We'll just try this with bm underscore add. Then we'll say draw self, and then we'll say GPU set blend mode. And this time we will set the blend mode to BM normal. This will create an additive blend mode, a bit like what Photoshop does. If we rerun our game now, the magic overlay for large should do something a little bit different. You'll see it's kind of blending with the image a little bit better. It's kind of making it glow based on what color it is. So you can see we get some different kind of effects when we do this. This is just a way of procedurally generating some items for your game. And also, you could store them in a database. You could procedurally create them before you launch your game and then store them in files that are included in the game so that you have thousands and thousands and thousands of different swords and different statistics that are all part of the same randomly generated system. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. I do apologize for the delay in getting this one out there. There was an issue that I had with GameMaker, a bug actually involving the event user functions. The scope of the variables wasn't working correctly when you use the event user perform function, which I had to go through and fix that before I was able to get the video created, edited, and uploaded for you guys. So I do apologize for the delay in that. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoy the procedural generation. If you have and found this cool, please leave a like and share it with all of your game developer friends, because I know they want to see it, just like you do too. And I will catch you guys in the next video. Take care and bye for now.